All right, everybody, welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you guys on this Monday. I'm back home for today, then I will be going back out to Latrobe tomorrow for 3 more days before I will be heading down to Jacksonville for the Steelers' preseason game on Saturday. So, a lot going on this week. Busy week, but let's talk about what we learned last week, the longest week of training camp. Tuesday to Sunday, they practice every day. We got 3 padded days. There was a lot to kind of take in, and some of the bigger trends I think are making it quite clear how this team is going to function. One of those kind of being how versatile this defense is, but we've talked about that a lot, and how much of a work in progress this offense is. But a lot of people, have talked definitely about, are you kind of worried about the offense? And that is something I want to touch upon here because I do think it's a realistic question. The defense has dominated this training camp. There's no working around that. They have been fantastic. And then you look at the offense and it's just been kind of sputtering. It hasn't fully fit together. Some of the pieces haven't garnered quite the trust yet from Aaron Rodgers that maybe you would have wanted them to. So all of these things make you question, well, what's going to go on as time passes? And can the offense find anything? There was one day there where they found some rhythm, and then obviously that never kind of came back. Like yesterday was a real mess. The run game didn't look good. The passing game has been out of sync. So all of that put together kind of has this aura of concern. And I do think naturally when you look at the offense, there's probably some reasons to be concerned. I don't think the wide receiver room is that great. The offensive line is young, and do you have some questions about some of the players? Broderick Jones has struggled to a degree in camp, and Troy Faltano's taken his lumps, though I think he has gotten better as time has gone on. I think the interior has looked completely fine, to be quite honest with you on that front. But it's this kind of lack of chemistry this team has overall, but it's early. And I think something that people will and should maybe take into consideration is oftentimes defenses mature quicker than offenses. It happens in most training camps. Defenses are ahead of offenses at this time of the year. And so keep that in mind when we're talking about the struggles of the Steelers offense. If anyone's concerned, I don't think it necessarily should just be from this performance. I think it should have been from looking at the roster prior to training camp, to be quite honest with you, and saying, has anything been disproven about them? And I don't think it has. And I think we've had those same concerns. So that's something I really wanted to touch on there. So we'll see kind of how they look. I imagine that Aaron Rodgers is going to play a little bit in the preseason, probably not in Jacksonville. I think he will play probably in this game at Tampa Bay, which is 2 weeks from now. It'll be at Acrisure Stadium. So that's one I think he might play in. The second preseason game is usually the ramp up for Pittsburgh, rather than the first or the third one. So that's kind of where I'm putting the pieces together, and expecting them to fit in. So let's kind of break down individually some players after talking just kind of about that offense, and where things stand. First of all, I think this rookie class has come out. Has looked pretty good. Um, I do. And so the Steelers really kind of putting this emphasis on stopping the run. Y.A. Black and Jack Sawyer and Derek Harmon, all three of those guys have done that. The team run periods have been a disaster for the Steelers offense. Not a lot of movement up front, but a lot of it's because, Y.A. Black is eating up space. It's because Derek Harmon is shooting the gap. It's because you have Jack Sawyer knifing off the edge. Those three guys have had really good camps. Jack Sawyer in particular has had a really fast start. I talked with outside linebackers coach Denzel Martin about him. They're really excited about him. So he's a guy that's going to come in, has instant expectations, and I think the Steelers are really excited to have in their outside linebacker room. So I think he's a big positive for them around this time of year. The defense is going to have most of those positives. I think about guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay having great camps. If you thought Slay, for example, was falling off, I mean, I see no kind of I see nothing to support that idea. Even when he's going up against DK Metcalf, who obviously is a very good player, he's competing, he's playing through the hands. So I really like what I've seen from Darius Slay as well. The safety room, Chuck Clark has come in and honestly been such a really solid, steady presence for this team. I'm not sure what I was expecting from Chuck Clark. He's kind of always been a really solid veteran. Um, but this guy is coming in. He's playing the nickel. He's playing a little bit of free. He's playing a little bit of strong. He's blitzing. He's doing a little bit of everything. And so I do think the Steelers are kind of in this right area with him where they have a nice depth option of veteran that they can rely on. Juan Thornhill has been good in coverage. I think, in the one-on-ones, he's had a lot of challenges against John O. Smith, but in team drills, he's made some really nice PBUs. He's been a guy that has flown around the defense and has come up and run support, made some plays. So I think he's been solid. So I think you can cobble together between thinking about what you have in Ramsey, who is kind of the slot safety outside option. When someone gets hurt, he's going to play outside corner. When they're all there, he will play in the nickel. Beanie will replace him if he has to kick outside, but he's going to play a little safety. He's going to play a little nickel. He'll play outside. He'll do a little bit of everything. So I think you call together him, Deshaun Elliott, and Chuck Clark, and then you kind of have a three-headed, solid triplet there at safety, and then you have Ramsey, who's kind of the do-it-all player. So I do think they have more stability at safety than I thought they would. Clark coming in helps that. Could they still add somebody? Sure. And I don't think it would hurt them. I also think the offensive line depth could use some help. I wouldn't hate adding another interior player. At tackle, I've actually really liked what Dylan Cook's shown. I think some of these depth interior linemen have struggled. Guys like Max Sharping, Nick Broker. But I do think the tackles have actually looked fine. Calvin Anderson, before he suffered an injury that's going to keep him out a little bit. Not into the regular season, but still a little bit here in the preseason. Was somebody that I thought really kind of fit in well with their offense, the offensive line. Even when he was up against the first team, he competed well. Calvin Anderson's kind of interesting because he is fine about 80 to 85% of the time, but when he loses terribly. He'll get like thrown to the ground or bust a protection call and let a free rusher through. Like it happens very rarely in his game, about 15% of the time, but it's still enough where you're like, dude, what is going on? And that's probably what happened last year when he allowed that sack when he came in for one play. Dylan Cook, on the other hand, I mean, he's been getting a lot of opportunities since Broderick's been a little limited. You've had Calvin Anderson banged up. Spencer Anderson's kicked out a little bit the left tackle, but Dylan Cook's been taking a lot of first team reps just through attrition. He's played well in those one-on-ones. He's gone up against Herbig and Sawyer and Highsmith at different points. He's held his own. I've long thought that Dylan Cook is a decent player and he should make this roster. He can play four different spots. He can play both tackle plus both guard spots. He moves around. He's really rock solid in pass pro. He's a highly competent player in terms of the football IQ side of things. I mean, we're talking about a guy that just checks off a lot of boxes. I think he should make the team. We'll see if things keep going that way. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him make this team. So I am a fan of what I've seen from Dylan Cook, and I have been for a little bit. So he's a player to look out for. I do think Caleb Johnson's strides in pass protection this week were noticeable. Still had some moments. There was like a part of team yesterday in 7 shots where he just got bulldozed by a linebacker, got chased, and then Rodgers had to escape and chase out. Um, but he did well in backstop backers on Friday. He held up Mark Robinson. He beat Malik Harrison once. There was a play then on Saturday where he stepped up in 7 shots, picked up the call, picked up the guy. He's actually got the toughest part, in my opinion, of pass pro down, which is the IDing part. He identifies fronts. He's able to identify the most dangerous blitzer. It's about technique and holding up now for him rather than just kind of doing that. So he's moving in the right direction there. He last week, with the start of the week, he was kind of helpless, felt like. And then on Friday, there was the fight. And then Saturday, he had that nice pickup. And, even though Sunday he had that little uh, guffaw, if you will, this guy still was on the right person and lost slowly enough to allow Rodgers to get out of there. So there are positives there, and I think Caleb Johnson's moving in the right direction there. Overall, I do think some of the offensive game planning that I'm seeing right now, just kind of the fits are a little odd. A lot of Jonnu in, with his hand in the dirt blocking, not something I want to see. Some of it's been due to injuries, and Muth had a day off yesterday, but not something that he should be doing, to be quite honest, very often, if at all. The 0-4 personnel stuff down on the goal line is cool, but Jonnu Smith as a running back, not sure you need to be doing that when Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, Kenny Gainwell exist. You can do it every now and then for a cool trick. Um, but that's something to think about. I just think the wide receiver personnel doesn't have enough right now. They need another guy really badly. They need another bigger player on the outside, someone like that to fill in. It could come at the waiver wire, it could be one of these free agents. Um, I know people will say Terry McLaurin, not expecting that. I guess I can't rule out anything because this offseason's been bananas, but I'm just not expecting him to leave the Commanders. So that's something to think about. But if you think, you look at this team's depth chart overall and the wide receiver position, it's like, what's going on there? We'll see what Rowan Wilson can do over the next few weeks into the preseason, but so far he's had a few wow moments, certainly more moments than others, but he hasn't had any consistency. He's had a lack of chemistry with Rodgers. We'll see if they can build that rapport. But he has not had a super impressive camp. Calvin Austin's been a little banged up. He's clearly the number two. Scotty Miller's stepped up and had a nice camp. And Rock Taylor is stepping up a little bit among the kind of undercard of wide receivers. But I don't think any of them represent a true answer, and they need another bigger receiver. I just haven't seen much from Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. I'd say he still has much left. If you can get someone who has a little bit more to give in that big outside blocking role, I think that could go some ways here for this offense. So I think that's something that they should think about. I think offensive line depth is something they should think about. I do think they have some really good pieces to work with. I certainly think the tight end room's great. I think they have a nice stable of backs. I think the D line, I think this defense is going to be really good. I do. I think they're versatile. They're doing different things schematically. They look more cohesive this year than they did last year. They're further along right now than they were at this time last year. I don't think there's any question about it. Peyton Wilson looks excellent heading into his second season. So there's a lot of things I find to be positives about this team, but there are still things, that, hey, what are your concerns? There are things cropping up there that if you are concerned about it, I don't blame you necessarily for being, a little bit cautious about buying into everything. But if you're fully on the Steelers hype train, there are definitely things to buy into as well. But right now, kind of looking at this team, defense really gelling well together, offense kind of figuring out its bearings. Certainly, I think has a need at wide receiver, and we'll continue to see how the offensive line comes together. I think Rodgers himself has been honestly kind of fine. I don't think he's been great. He's had a few misses accuracy wise, but if you watch the tape from last year, that was pretty expected. I still think he's got high football IQ. He hasn't had a lot of throws where you're like, why did he throw that? Um, he's still working together, I think, with these receivers. I think he and DK Metcalf have made a lot of strides in terms of figuring each other out. They have definitely hooked up more on some passes in recent days. I think that is coming along nicely. I think his connection with Washington and Frymouth are already there as well. So I do think there are some positives for Aaron Rodgers. I think he's been fine. I think they're going to get what they expect. I think they're going to get a fine quarterback, somewhere around the 15th, 16th best in the league, and we'll see where that can carry them. But I think a lot of it is going to be what's around him, not just him. All right, folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. We will be back tomorrow when training camp returns.